Hi there, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Adventure Rider. Today we are going to be going head to head with two iconic Honda dirt bikes. We have the big torque-heavy XR600 and the slightly lighter, more agile XR400. Both of them are legendary in their own rights. They deliver quite different riding experiences. So if you've ever wondered which one is the right XR for you, then stick with us as we take a deep dive into both of these fantastic machines.
The XR600 ran from 1985 to 2000. Its 591cc air-cooled single produces around 46 horsepower with a dry weight of 134 kilos, 146 wet. This example is my 1997 XR in what I'd call a stock plus setup. I paid just under $3,500 and have invested about the same again. Upgrades include suspension rebuild, custom wheels, Arrow exhaust, long-range tank, Mikuni carb, oil cooler, and a lot more, and over 25 hours of work. You don't need to go this far though. 5 to 6k should get you a perfectly capable XR600 ready for serious riding. The XR400 had a slightly shorter run of 8 years without many significant changes in that time frame. The engine is a 397 air-cooled single 4-stroke with 4 valves, putting out 34 horsepower, a 35% difference of 12 bhp as compared to the 600. The XR400 has a dry weight of 116 kilos and 125 kilos wet, resulting in a weight saving of about 20 kilos wet compared to the 600. This is James's XR400. It's a 2000 model in very much stock setup with a long-range tank fitted. The total cost is seen as a far more reasonable $3,500.
But whichever one of these bikes it is you're drawn more towards, there are a few common issues that you should be aware of when you go towards the buying process. So number one, cold start issues or starting issues generally, usually one of three things between the stator, the valve clearances and the carb itself. So if you can bargain your way into a really good deal for a non-starter, then you might be in luck and it might be a quick fix. Number two, the choke plate on the standard carbs is rubbish and it's quite a well-known failure point. So inside, the little piece of metal that actually opens and closes as you articulate the choke lever is prone to breaking, shearing off and making its way through into your engine, which is no good. And it's a relatively easy upgrade. There's a link I will put in the description below, which is a definite upgrade worth doing. And in fact, when we bought my bike, that clearly happened under a previous owner, and that's why we couldn't get it to start easily. It's well worth looking into. It's the price of definite upgrade worth doing for all XR owners. So this little thing down here, the final drive shaft, a lot of these bikes get turned into supermotos, which I'm sure they're very cool for, but they were designed as dirt bikes without push drives in the rear wheels. So it puts a lot of the stress on the final drive shaft here. What you want to check for is that you don't have movement around the actual spline itself. A little bit of sideways movement up and down the spine is okay, but you don't want it moving backwards and forwards on the actual spindle. Number four, frame corrosion is something you need to just check. You need to get under the bike, look under the seat, and it can actually be caused by water getting into the very holes it's supposed to come out of. Number five, owner modification. A lot of these bikes have been modded over time. It's quite hard to find completely stock ones. So when you speak to previous owners, get a good understanding and a feel for how much they know about the work that they've done themselves. Otherwise, you can spend quite a long time trying to put it right. The kickstart is one of the defining features of the XR range, and it's something that is a focal point for many people. There will be days where you both love and hate that kickstart, but if you follow the following procedure, which is known as the Honda dance, then you should be fine. So number one, we're going to come over to the bike and we have the decompression lever, and we are going to just kick through, pulling that lever in a few times, which is just going to clear the chambers and give us a nice neutral starting point. We're then going to cycle through the Kickstarter, having pulled out the choke. We are then going to cycle through until we find top dead center. So we can do it nice and gently, feel for the point of most resistance. And then once we get there, we are going to, on the next step, this is quite important, we're going to pull the decompression lever in and we're going to go just the teeniest notch past. This goes past the point of most resistance, preserving most of the stroke available for the best chance of getting the bike started. And we want one big stroke here. We want to go all the way through, smoothly through to the end of that stroke. Hot starts are slightly more straightforward. You should just be able to get top dead center, give it a big kick. At no point in any of these processes do you use the throttle before it splutters to life, otherwise you will ruin your chances. If you give it more than 2 or 3 attempts to get going, you might need to give it a minute or two. Alternatively, if you're in a rush, you can usually pull the decompression lever in and clear it through with 10 swift kicks and restart the Honda dance all over again. So the 600 is definitely a little bit more to start. It's a bit more of everything really, and that's probably the defining difference between them. But one thing I do absolutely love about the 600 is its seat. It's like a big comfy sofa. It doesn't look overly generous, but boy, it is probably the best seat out of any bike I've ever ridden, including massive 1200 GSs and the like. The dimensions in terms of the height of the rider that the bike caters to, James won't mind me saying, he's on the shorter side. I'm sort of 6'2", as is Matt. As you can see, none of us have a problem in stock configuration with the bike, so as long as you're used to a dirt bike with a slightly higher elevation, there's no need to think about shortening the linkage or anything like that. On roads like this, I'm definitely the more comfortable, there's no doubt about it. I've got a lot more torque, mid-range as well, in most of the gears, to be able to just very comfortably cruise along. It's a little bit less rev happy in that respect. The stock bikes are absolutely fantastic, and there isn't really anything that you need to change about them. There's a few areas such as the exhaust I find quite irritating because most of the baffles have decomposed over time and they can be really offensive and loud. So the Arrow exhaust is a really good upgrade for me there. Things like the carb are a worthy upgrade, but again, they're to me just really unleashing what the full potential of the engine has on offer. So on lanes like these that are quite narrow and windy and there's lots of elevation changes and ruts, they're certainly not flowing open high speed affairs, partly due to needing to be considerate of other users on the trails and stuff. The 400 is undoubtedly the optimal choice in terms of the weight and the feel of it, the ratios on the gearbox and the overall balance of the engine. I quite often find myself kind of stuck in between a couple of gears, being perhaps a little bit low and chuggy versus a little bit high and rev happy on a lot of the speeds we end up doing on these trails, but it'll do it. It'll get through either of them, so it's not an issue. Here we are, slithering and sliding around already. That's what we like. And the traction that you can lay down in any gear, like, you do not have to be precious. It's not like in certain two-stroke machines, 250s, and potentially more so with the 400s. You can tractor out of anything with a 600, even if you're a bit ham-fisted with it, and that's quite reassuring as well. Weight and balance on the bikes is absolutely fantastic, though it's sort of hard to compare really either of these two to anything that's more modern. They don't feel anywhere near as heavy as an adventure bike, but they also don't feel like an enduro bike. They just feel somewhere in the middle, and in many ways the kind of riding I like to do, just really actually perfectly suited to these trails. So I might try and get in front of James here because he likes to go a little bit slower up these parts, which was kind of what I was alluding to before about it being a bit more pleasurable going a bit slower on the 400, whereas the 600, see, I was in totally the wrong gear there. It didn't really matter, just chugged through it. I'm going to try and put Matt off with a massive beam of my 4200 lumen headlight. Always got to duck for cover through here. Whee! I'll test out my new rims. Do I want first? Do I want second? The answer is second, but if the 400 in front of you has a different gear thing going on, you can get a little bit caught out. Straight away you feel that kickstart is a lot easier. The whole bike feels completely different. It's remarkable that they are so closely related because it does feel substantially different. Everything's lighter, everything's quieter. The suspension on the 600 reaches out in front a little bit more, whereas on the 400 it's a little bit more straight down. And that can make the 400, it has a slightly more twitchy nature to it compared to the 600, which obviously is good for response. For this kind of lane, either bike's fine. The 400, I'm much happier just poodling on this. It doesn't feel like it needs to change up or down at these sorts of speeds. I think very much this kind of thing is exactly where the 400 is supposed to be, whereas the 600 sort of feels like it's trying to take you somewhere perhaps a little bit more fast and furious. So as you saw there, James opening that throttle, whatever gear you're in, you get some immediate wheel spin. On the 400, it's not the same. Oh, we got a big stick there. So in some senses, as you would probably expect, the 400 then lends itself perhaps to being a little bit more beginner friendly, but I don't really think so. I think if you're a competent rider, even as a beginner, you're going to feel your way through a 600 just fine. So different. So just to illustrate my point about different people's bikes of the same exact model feeling very different from one another, this is Matt's. It's an XR400, just like James's, but his has a battery. He's done some mods to it. Obviously you can see there's a lot of electronics, which is not standard. Yeah, partly due to that extra sort of weight up the front, this bike's feeling a little bit more familiar as compared to the 600. The brakes arguably feel a little bit more responsive because there's a little bit less weight, I suppose. So if nothing else, we've had a pretty awesome day out on the lanes comparing these two, well, three in our case today, amazing machines. The honest truth is that the conclusion just has to be, if you think the XR400 is the better option, you're right. And if you think it's the 600, you're right, because they are both fantastic. And in spite of their differences, there is nothing that one can do that the other can't, and vice versa. They're really credible options for taking you on trails, taking you further afield through rallies, and they just give a very different riding experience. So go to the one you naturally gravitate towards. They do say you should never listen to the opinions of owners, so we're really sorry for wasting your time here, but I will leave you with one final thought, which is that all three of us have had a lot of bikes in our time, and since we acquired our XRs, we've also had other bikes in the garage come and go. But we're united in saying that we can't foresee ever parting ways with our current flock of XRs, and that should tell you everything that you need to know.